So I'm going to bring in a crew here, and we'll go live across all the places. Hello, Kim. How are you, buddy? Good morning from us, Mad Dogs. I love that. Oh, I love that. Hello, Amy. What's going on, girlfriend? Oh, so nice to have your company. I feel like this is royalty here, Ames. What's going on, mate? All right. Who else we got? Bonnie, what's going on, girlfriend? I hope you're good. All right, team. So I'm going to say it once more time, and then we are here to rock this. So if you have any live questions that you would want to ask around your nutrition, your approach to your training, anything that you're struggling with, you can ask the questions and I will answer the questions. So just pop them into the comments and I'll do my best. So I'm going to start with Tim's question, which is this: are liquid calories and food calories exactly the same? For example, you target 2,000 calories. If you go over by 500 calories with food versus liquid, is there a difference, as in a breakdown in the system? Is it stored the same, time the same, weigh the same amounts? And Tim says, I hope this comes across as the right question. It made sense in my head. Okay, so here's the major difference. So people think of calories as a thing, right? They think calories are a thing. They're not a thing. You can't hold a calorie. Okay? What calories actually are is a measurement. So if I was to ask you, are centimeters a thing? Are kilograms a thing? Calories are not a thing. You can't throw a calorie, right? So it's not a noun. A calorie is a way of measuring something, okay? And what is it actually measuring? Calories are measuring the amount of energy that is stored in a thing. So if I take an apple or this coffee, I can measure the amount of calories that are contained in this coffee cup. So what I am actually measuring is the amount of energy. Now, why is that actually relevant? Because when I take that energy that's in that coffee cup or stored in that banana and I swallow it, it goes into my body, right? Then in my body, in order for that to do what we eat food for or drink food for, it's got to be able to be transformed into a different form. And what does the body do? It turns energy in food, stored energy, into energy in movement, energy in heat. And they're the two big ways that we dispel energy out of the body, right? So it comes in through the food, and then we turn it into either movement, we turn it into heat, or we turn it into some type of tissue like body fat or muscle. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of background. So what happens to liquid calories? What's the big issue with liquid calories? It's not that they're a different type of calories, no different that there's no different type of kilograms, it's just kilograms. But what it is that when you take in a lot of calories from liquids, they move through you very quickly. They don't tend to fill you up. So I want you to think about, say, a can of Coke that's going through your body versus a steak that's going through your body. The can of Coke, firstly, is liquid, number one. Number two, the can of Coke doesn't need to be broken down by your stomach, right? Doesn't need to be digested, so it moves through really quite quickly. So this is the reason why, for most people, liquids are a problem. Liquids are the first level of what you should eliminate in your diet. And the reason for it is because it doesn't fill you up. Think about Coke. It comes in, it gives you all the calories from the sugar, and then goes straight through you and you piss it out again. And so it provides no satiation. If you take water, for example, or Diet Coke, it still moves through you at the same pace, but it doesn't give calories to your body. So therefore, it's not a problem. It fills you up temporarily. You get a little bit of stomach distension, but apart from that, it just goes straight through you, which is why we encourage drinking lots of water and drinking lots of, if you want to, 0-calorie soft drinks and cordials and that type of stuff, because it's effectively filling you up temporarily and then moving straight through you. It helps your digestion, which is a really good thing. So hopefully that answers the question, Tim. It's not that they're a different type of calories. It is that liquid calories move through you quicker. So if you're having a lot of liquid calories, you're getting all of the calories without any satiation. So at a top level, we want to try to eliminate the liquid calories from our diet as much as possible. That's the first change that we should make. We can then go on to doing things like improving if you read through our new nutrition protocol, that's the next step, is introducing more whole foods that actually fill us up. But before we worry about filling up, let's not fill ourselves with sugar-containing food beverages that actually do nothing else but just go in and out and then just give us the sugar. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers the question. And it is a good question. Kim says, that's a good question, Tim. It is a great question. Okay, team, let's keep going. Now, if you do have any live questions you want to ask, you can pop them in the comments. Can you lose weight and still be on track with macros, having your favorite fast food or guilty pleasures? Yes, you can. So the way to think about this, if you start thinking about calories the same as money and financial budgets, you will be absolutely on point. So if the question that I asked you was, can you still save money even if you treat yourself out to a restaurant once a week? Of course, the answer is yes, right? You can still spend a little bit of money. Where it doesn't work is if you spend all your money on restaurants and then wonder, where's the money gone? So the long story short is you want to think about it like a budget. So when you learn to track your calories with something like MyFitnessPal or Fat Secret or something like that, what you're effectively learning to do is like a financial budget. You're trying to work out, how do I spend the calories where I want them, where I enjoy them, and where it helps my life, it helps me to perform, it helps me to build muscle, it helps me to burn fat, and how do I not save up all these calories where I don't really need them? So every person is going to have a different thing that they'd prefer to spend their calories on. I always use the example that I would prefer to spend my calories on a glass of wine, but my wife would prefer to spend her calories on a croissant. And I could think of nothing worse. To me, eating a croissant is just an absolute waste of calories, but she loves it, right? So it all depends on what you like. And this is why your journey should be about cultivating an eating plan around what you like to do, right? So once you've got some calorie awareness, you can build a meal plan around what you want to do. Now, if you are in Better Body Academy, if you are in our community, and you go and look at the new nutrition protocol that we just released last week, you will find a training in there on how to build your own meal plan. And I've even given you a Google sheet that you can actually use to plan your own meal plan out with some training around that. That's in the new nutrition protocol. All right. People keep saying that muscle weighs more than fat. Is that true? Asking because my weight has gone up, but I feel like I'm looking smaller. All right. This is a big one, isn't it? I think a lot of people have heard this idea that muscle weighs more than fat. It's a little bit of a strange one because if you think about it, it kind of goes back to Tim's question about calories. If you have a kilogram of muscle and a kilogram of fat, they weigh the same thing, a kilogram. So this idea that muscle weighs more than fat, that doesn't really hold up. However, muscle is more dense than fat. That is absolutely true. So if you were to look at a kilogram of muscle and you were to look at a kilogram of fat, the muscle would be smaller and more dense, right? Where the kilogram of fat would be a little bit fluffier, right? A little bit looser. It's not packed as much, so it doesn't occupy as much space. So actually what can happen is when you are on a weight loss journey and you're doing resistance training and you're eating enough protein, right? So you're protecting your muscles. What can actually happen is the muscles can actually your body can look more defined because the fat's coming off the surface, but the muscles remaining underneath, right? So it looks like you're getting a little bit more muscular, but you might be staying the same weight or you might be losing weight. And it's just simply because the layer of fat is being removed. Now, if you want to talk a little bit about fat, particularly belly fat, let's think about this. You have your abs right? Your abs, which are a muscle, a sheet of muscle. Then you have belly fat, which sits underneath the abs. That's called visceral fat. So if that's the abs, it's sitting underneath the wall of the abs. And then you have fat that sits on the top of the wall of the abs. So the deeper fat that sits behind the wall of the abs, that's the particularly dangerous one. That's what we call visceral fat or deep fat. That's the one that kind of becomes a problem when it's hugging the organs. But if you have fat on the outside of the abs, that isn't as problematic. It just doesn't look and feel great because it's a little bit wobbly because it's on the surface of the abs. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, guys, again, if you're watching on live, you can ask anything and I'm more than happy to answer the questions. And good morning to everyone that's joined in our client group as well. All right, let's keep them going. If you're on Instagram and you want to ask any questions, more than welcome to actually join in, guys. Can I achieve my fitness goals without a strict plan? Is it necessary to have a plan? The short answer is, yeah, you could. You definitely could. I think it's a lot harder because when you wake up in the morning, what are you going to do? I think a lot of people, they have an intention, right? They want to lose some weight. They want to get healthy. And then they wake up in the morning and they don't have a plan, so they don't do it. There's too much thinking involved, right? And when you start to think and it starts to become overwhelming, what does your brain just goes, oh, it's too hard. I'll start tomorrow. So absolutely, the thing that we need to get right is a simple plan. And the simple plan should be formed around what works, right? And what works time and time and time and time again is prioritizing your nutrition. This is the reason that most people struggle. This is the reason they think that they can exercise and everything will look better. It will not. It will never, ever work. You'll never get to a point where exercising off your fat works. Hey, Pascal, how are you, mate? You need to get to a point where exercise is the top priority. And where nutrition is the top priority. If we can get our nutrition eating right, then we build in some exercise into that. Well, guess what? Now we've got a plan. I would suggest you prioritize walking over everything else, particularly if you're carrying some extra weight. And then at the right time, I would add in some resistance training, even if that means training at home with some resistance bands or your own body weight. That's the importance, okay? Hello, Benny boy. How are you, mate? Lovely to have your company in here. And thanks for doing that, Erin. All right, team. Any questions you want to ask? How do I figure out or calculate my macros or my calorie deficit? Yeah, good question. So here's the thing, right? Inside of Better Body Academy, and if you are with us, hey, Rel, how are you? You will know that we don't do individualized calorie breakdowns. This is not because we're trying to neglect responsibility. It is because at best, all of these equations that people use and the calorie calculators that people use, they're just guesses anyway. They're just estimations anyway. For example, we could have two people that weigh 200 pounds or say 100 kilograms, and they could have two completely different calorie requirements based on what they're doing, their body percentage, their body fat percentage, how much muscle they've got. You can have two 200-pound people that look completely different. One might be 10% body fat, the other one might be 40% body fat. So the reality is we're guessing. This is the long story short. We're guessing anyway. So here's the thing you need to know. Most men are going to be in calorie maintenance. In other words, if they eat around 2,500 calories, they'll maintain their weight. This is just the average man using ballpark figures, okay? 2,500 calories. For a woman, generally around 2,000 calories, generally. Now, there's people that are different to this, right? If you're highly active, you're going to need more. Now, with that being the case, our strategy is rather than trying to calculate as a guess all this extra work and individualization, which is unnecessary, what we want to do is we want to bump our maintenance calories down by 300 to 500 calories. So this means if you're a man, you bump it down to between 2,000 and 2,200. If you're a woman, you bump it down to between 1,500 and 1,700, and you're about there. And then what you do is you try to eat consistently at that level for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and your body will tell you the result. The body will tell you whether you're in a calorie deficit or not. If you are losing body fat, if you are losing weight, you are in a calorie deficit. If you are staying the same, you are not in a calorie deficit. You are in calorie maintenance. So in your circumstance, we have to create a calorie deficit. And the only way to do that is to either reduce calories going in to your mouth more or do some more exercise. Does this make sense? Okay. Why is keto so popular? Why do a lot of trainers still prescribe keto? It's a good question. I think trends in the fitness industry come and go. So high protein is really in vogue at the moment. But before it was high protein, it was keto and it was super high fat. And I can even remember, the Australian dietary guidelines when I was a kid, and I don't even know what they are now because I don't pay attention to them, but they were carbs. You need to be eating mostly carbs. So I think these trends kind of come and go. Why was keto so highly prescribed? I honestly don't know. I don't know because for me, it's a terrible way to eat. It's eliminating the body's preferred fuel source, which is carbohydrates. So I am not aware of any circumstances where a person would be trying to improve their performance in life, and particularly with regards to cardio and training hard, and they're keto. It's just the science shows this is just not the best way to eat because the body loves carbohydrates for fueling performance. I see my friend Nick Friend has just joined this live on Instagram, and this is a great example. Like, you wouldn't be preparing for a marathon on keto. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, unless you hate carbs, I would see no reason to go down that line. And good morning to everyone that's just joined, or evening if it is for you. Guys, I'm rocking off some questions that have been asked over the course of the last week. But if you have any questions that you would like to ask live, by all means, drop them into the comments, and I'm more than happy to answer the questions as they come through. All right. Is knees going over toes wrong in squats and lunges? No, it's actually right. I really do think that when we're doing things like squats and lunges, it's a really good idea to actually have the knees coming over the toes. This can really help our ankle mobility of all things. Why is squatting such an important movement? Because it's functional. You're going to be doing it for the rest of your life, whether it's getting up off a couch or bending down to pick up your little grandson, whatever the case. It's a really functional movement, and getting good through a wide range of motion. If you can't squat when you're 70 years old, life's going to be pretty tough. So certainly getting good ankle mobility is a very, very good thing, not a bad thing, and not something that needs to be avoided. Good morning, Basso, and good morning, Bede, and good morning, Deb, and good morning, Karina. I hope you guys are having a lovely start. All right, team, we're going to smack out a few more questions and then we're good. Why does it matter how long my rest is between sets? For example, powerlifting and muscle building training. What effect does it have to have different rest periods? This is a good question. Good morning, Nikki. How are you, mate? Okay, so rest between sets. Why do we want to have rest between sets? When we're in the gym, what we're trying to do is, generally speaking, work off on one or two things. We're trying to work on the adaptation of building stronger muscles, or we're trying to work on the adaptation of building bigger muscles. And a lot of you ladies would be like, I don't want bigger muscles. When you want tone, what that means is that you want slightly bigger muscles with not fat. That's what tone means, okay? So In order to build strength, you need to be lifting heavier. In order to lift heavier, you need to be having a break between your sets, right? Because if you don't have a break, and what most people do is, a lot of people do rather, is they take really short breaks, and like when they do step ups and shit like this in between and try to combine movements, that's great if your predominant goal is to burn calories. But most people's predominant goal, they're going in the gym to try to retain some muscle as they get older. And you need to have a break between your sets so that when you go from set 1, have a break, to set 2, going back into set 2, you've actually got some energy left in your muscles. If you start taking really short breaks between sets and not allowing those muscles to recover, you're almost doing like endurance type training. Now, that's a completely different form of training and valid in its own right. But what we're trying to do is build strength, build muscle. So you need to have a rest between sets. That doesn't mean you need to sit down. One of the things you can actually do is really, really smart. It's walk in between sets. In fact, I think that who does this? Do any of you guys do this when you're at the gym? This is actually a little hack. Nikki says, I want big muscles. Yeah, totally. Well, you can't build big muscles if you're having 10-second breaks between sets. But one of the hacks, good morning, Adam. One of the hacks is to go for a walk while you're in the gym. Like, stay mobile rather than sitting down. If you think about it, if you're taking, let's say, a 2-minute rest and you're doing 6 exercises and you're doing 3 sets of each exercise, that's 18 exercises, right? 18 sets. And then if you're sitting down for, say, 2 minutes for each one of these 18 sets in between, that means you're sitting down for 2 times 18, so 36 minutes, right? Wouldn't we be better to use that time to just like walk around the gym and knock up our steps? This is a really great hack. Rather than having to find more time to do steps at the end of your day, what you can actually do is walk around during your gym session and you'll probably get another 3,000 to 4,000 steps without adding any extra time to your day. So that's actually a little hack. But what you don't want to be doing is like trying to keep your pace up and breathing heavy. That's not a good way to position your resistance training workouts. All right, I think we've got 2 questions to go. If you don't have anything extra, guys, that you want me to answer. Can exercising too much be a bad thing? Yeah, it can be. And it depends largely on the intensity of which you're exercising to. So exercise is most definitely a stress to the body. Now, if it's if it's done the right way, it's a good stress. It's a stress that makes change happen. However, if your goal is to change your body and you are overtraining it, well, you can definitely do too much. As an example, let's say that your goal is to try to build some muscle, but you're training 6 or 7 days a week, extremely heavy with high intensity, and your body's not getting any time to actually rest and recover. Well, you might actually be doing too much. Let's say that you're wanting to, let's say, build up to running a half marathon, but you are doing 4 days a week in the gym and then four days that you're actually doing cardio training. You're probably just putting your body to a point where it's actually breaking down rather than being beneficial. And this is something that I think a lot of people need to understand, is that at the start, the body changes when you just give it enough stimulation to change. If you've been inactive for, a decade, you need a very little bit of activity, a very little bit of stimulation. You don't need to do a ton of exercise at the start. In fact, 1 day, 2 days a week is perfect. So too much exercise is most definitely a possibility. And I hope that answers the question. Hello, OJ. How are you, my legend? Jazz walks around the gym like a loony between steps. Yeah, between sets. That's exactly right, Kim. And what it does is it actually helps that you can do the steps inside of your gym workout so that you don't have to add them on when you get home. This is a two-step hack, right? If you're really struggling to get your 10,000 steps, but you're pretty consistent in the gym, do your steps in between your sets at the gym. Secondly, every time you pick up your phone, stand up. You'll be amazed at how active you can become without adding any extra time to your day. Like, it's criminal how good it is. Okay, team, we've got one more question. Is there any value in doing all of your reps until failure? Yeah. So if you don't understand the question is basically asking, when you're in the gym, is it okay to push until you can't do any more reps? That's the question. There's a line there, I think. I like the idea of doing that for the most part because it's objective. Let me try to explain this. So for the average person, we don't have a great gauge of how far we can actually push ourselves. If you're not used to lifting in the gym, you probably don't know how much extra you have got in you. Let's talk about David Goggins. David Goggins talks about something called the 40% rule. Now, this guy's a fucking maniac. But anyway, he talks about something called the 40% rule. And the 40% rule is that when you think you are tired and gone and burnt and ready to quit, you're actually only at about 40% of your capacity. So if that's true, well, that basically means that we're leaving 60% on the table when we think that we're actually at failure. That's pretty crazy to think about that. Now, I think it would be harmful for the average mum and dad to push themselves that hard all the time, particularly if you want to train 3 to 4 times a week. If you only want to train once a week, then a higher intensity is a good idea. But I think from a mindset perspective, particularly if you're a beginner to intermediate trainer, going in and lifting a weight where you could, when you get to that point of where you're not quite at failure, but you're maybe 1 rep before you're about to fail, that's probably the right level of intensity. In my opinion, that's probably the right level of intensity. In other words, when you stop your set, you could have done 1 more, maybe 2 more, but no more than that. If we're pushing to failure, that basically means we're at a point where we could not do a single more rep. And I think that when you're doing that, it becomes quite, it's good, but it becomes quite hard to keep up that level of intensity. And particularly as you get older, you probably risk accruing a little bit of injury. And I don't know if it's necessarily worth that. Injuries are like par of the course. They come when you start to push yourself a little bit, but it also sucks for someone that's kind of lost 10 to 20 pounds. They're super proud of themselves. They're feeling great because they've lost some weight. And then all of a sudden they injure themselves. They can't train. They can't walk. They start to emotionally eat and then put the weight back on again. So it's probably better just to play it a little bit safer than going to complete failure. That's probably my opinion. All right, team. Well, I hate leaving when we've got like people watching on all platforms, but if you guys don't have any other questions, then that's probably a wrap for today. Thanks for coming in and being part of Q&A. We do this every week at the exact same time. You can come in, you can ask any questions and be part of it. Other than that, guys, I hope you're having a lovely start to the week. Just be mindful if you're in Better Body Academy, particularly if you are new, in Better Body Academy. We have coaching calls happening over the next 2 days. Get on a coaching call. If you are in Australia and you are a man, it is tonight at 8 p.m. Australian time tonight at 8 p.m. If you are in the UK or America or Canada, then we do our coaching call tomorrow. But whatever the case, go to the top of our Facebook groups. Go and check the local times out. Let's make this a big week of coaching calls, guys. as we get to the end of the push-up challenge, which has been such a challenge for everyone. Congratulations to everyone that's actually partaken in this, because this bloody challenge is hard. If you've been part of the push-up challenge, it's real hard. So well done. So team, peace out. Give me a flex, a silent head nod. I appreciate you guys.